Hello, we got some new cards for the upcoming expansion. First up is Totem Smash. 1 mana shaman spell that deals 2 damage, and overkill summon a basic totem. So I think sometimes you have a use for a 1 mana spell that deals 2 damage, and with this one the overkill can also help you synergize with a totem shaman. Wait a second, totem shaman sucks. Yeah, this card's pretty trash. And while I think you could get some value with this and Zentimo, I still don't think it's worth running this spell. I think the only time you're going to end up seeing this card is when you randomly get it. Up next is Spirit of the Frog. 3 mana 0/3 Shaman Spirit with stealth for 1 turn, and whenever you cast a spell, draw a spell from your deck that costs 1 more. Now, Shaman isn't the strongest in terms of draw, but Shudderwock has found ways of drawing pretty quickly. And while I think it is nice that you could specifically draw certain spells with this card, I think it would still be hard to specifically get a deck around this. If you want to be precise and only try to draw a few cards, then really in order to get value off of this, you need to draw the cheaper spell and this card before you draw the spell that you actually want. By then, I would just include 2 draw cards instead. But I don't know if I can really rate this card at this time. Is Blizzard gonna print a card that's gonna promote a mostly spell shaman? Or is there gonna be a card that somehow shuffles a bunch of spells into their deck? There has to be a reason why you're gonna want to draw a lot of spells. But I'm really hoping by the end of the reveals that they introduced a new, exciting, and hopefully competitive archetype for shaman. Next up we have Crowd Roaster. 7 mana, 7/4 neutral dragon with the battle cry. If you're holding a dragon, deal 7 damage to an enemy minion. I don't mind the mana, I don't mind the battle cry, I don't mind the attack, but Blizzard was trying to meme too hard with this card and the 4 health is just no good. They just had to make a 4 mana 7/7 joke out of this card. It's another dragon for a possible dragon synergy, most likely in Warrior. You aren't guaranteed the battle cry because you do need to have a dragon in your hand, but I think a lot of the time you'll be able to deal the 7 damage and most likely kill an enemy minion. And while it would be nice to have some removal and another dragon in your deck, paying 7 mana for a 4 health minion is pretty bad. 4 health is just so much easier to clear than 5 health. So I think a lot of the time your opponent is going to be able to cheaply remove this and you won't get that much value. I think in a dragon deck this is somewhere a bit below average. If you're looking for dragon synergies or you really don't have any single target removal, then maybe you could add Crowd Roaster to your deck. But really, I think there's already a lot of dragons in the game that are just better. Next up is Akali the Rhino. 8 mana 5/5 warrior legendary beast god with rush and overkill. Draw a rush minion and give it 5/5. So I think this is an interesting card because rush is normally for a more tempo oriented deck. But with this card you're paying 8 mana for a 5/5 and really you want to get the overkill. So it ends up only really clearing something with 4 health. And then in order to get that 5/5 value, besides a few exceptions, you're gonna have to wait another turn. And I think waiting another turn is a pretty slow play for a tempo deck. Maybe you could just run these 3 small rush minions and guarantee that you get the value on the same turn. Honestly, they wouldn't be bad with 5/5 stats. And I think that's kind of the point of this card, is that nothing's gonna be really that bad once you give it 5/5. I think the card is fine. It draws you a specific type of minion, and in total it's 10/10 stats that will have rush for 8 mana. Maybe it sees play, maybe it doesn't, but I think it's a really boring legendary. And next up is Grim Rally. 1 mana warlock spell, destroy a friendly minion and give your minions +1/+1. I mean, this card has a lot of potential. In a Zoolock, usually you fill your board up pretty quickly. And let's say you have something like a Firefly, as soon as you attack with it, you can just use this to destroy it and gain a bunch of stats for your other minions. Damage is damage, however you can get it in a Zoolock. The funny thing about this card is it's kind of self-destructive, right? It's like making your board smaller before you buff them. Maybe the one exception is using this on the cube, which will then summon you 2 minions. But I really don't think this is a cube lock synergy. Maybe you'll find a Death Rattle minion for this to hit, but mostly I think you're just targeting small minions on your board to then buff the rest of your board. You could synergize this card with Spirit of the Bat and maybe they'd both see play in a Zoolock. But I think a lot of time buffing your minions and adding some damage is going to be more of a play you do at the end of your game. At least the end game for an aggro deck. I think the sacrifice might be just a little bit too much for this type of deck, and you can really only play this once you have a big enough board to make it worth the value. I'd put this slightly above average, but I still think sometimes it's going to be a little bit trouble to play this in Zoolock. Next up is Stampeding Roar. 6 mana druid spell, summon a random beast from your hand and give it rush. I don't know what to say about this card. We really haven't found anything special or new with this card in terms of Beast Druid. There's some beasts that maybe it could work, but there's nothing that really synergizes with this card as a more tempo play. We're still waiting for a lot of Druid cards. With that said though, I'm going to give this a pretty low score. And last up is Master's Call. 3 mana spell, discover a minion in your deck. If all 3 are beasts, draw them. Our prayers have been answered. This is draw for Hunter, and it's pretty good too. 3 mana lets you discover a minion in your deck. It's a little bit expensive, but it is very specific on what you can choose. Hunter is so desperate for draw that even if there's not a great chance that you get 3 beasts with this, I still think it might be worth playing. Tracking is used to specifically draw a card, but it's also used to thin out your deck. I think Master's Call is a more controlled version of that. You can find a specific minion that you're looking for, but it doesn't thin out your deck and you don't lose a bunch of potential value. I think an aggro hunter is going to use this and run almost exclusively beasts and try to draw 3 with this card every time. And then I also think there's going to be some control decks that do run a lot of beasts, but aren't necessarily going to draw 3 with this card. I think when you give Hunter draw, it's going to be good in the class. And the amount of choice and control you have over this Discover draw is pretty good. Control Hunter, here we come. Alright, those are all of the cards for today. I'll be back tomorrow with some more, but until then, ta-ta.